Let me see that. All right.
All right.
It's a practical guide to supernatural genius. Why don't you come inside and listen to our story? Maybe it's just like your story too. Maybe it's all things that you've been through. It's a practical guide to supernatural genius. The podcast. Welcome to the Practical Guide to Supernatural Genius. I'm your host, Joseph Arthur, and my guest is Shane Alexander, the great singer-songwriter, and we're here to discuss things. The premise of the podcast, this is episode 1, is a practical guide to supernatural genius, which is overcoming creative blocks, overcoming creative struggles through various aspects. And I'm working on a book called The Practical Guide to Supernatural Genius, or The Practical Guide, or A Practical Guide, I don't know. And it's got a bunch of chapters. The chapter we're going to focus on today is the one on prayer, and how prayer and meditation and stuff like of that nature, the spiritual realm, can help us through creative stumbling blocks. And Shane is also a Buddhist, so I think that's kind of cool in talking about this subject. But what do you think, Shane? There's the intro for the Practical Guide to Supernatural Genius, the podcast.
I love it already. We're off to the races. You've got a beautiful song already queued up. I would expect nothing less.
I wrote it in 5 minutes.
Of course you did. Yeah. Yeah.
But I recorded it and I couldn't remember some of the lyrics. So it's interesting that in and of itself, it's like, it's that quick thing where you're not thinking, you're not using, you're sort of just going off the wave of inspiration. And even like this podcast in and of itself, I feel like unprepared for it. I'm not really sure what we're doing. And yet we're going for it and just doing something. And then that's when creativity happens. What do you think?
Absolutely. Just trusting the process. You know, having spent some time with you, I mean, you're such a creative, and it's a dazzling spectacle to be in your presence, because you are just a ball of creativity that never ever stops creating. And again, you've got multiple mediums where you're operating at such a high level, but I don't ever see you stop to think. I just see you like creating all the time, and it's something to behold. Yeah, it's pretty special.
Well, that's the outward appearance then. If you're just like, because inwardly I live a life like revolving in a pit of fear and doom and stuckness and bad habits and overcoming and all the craziness. Like the whole reason I'm interested in this subject to the degree that I am is because I wrestle with it so much. It's like, it's such a huge battle. The battle of being an artist and maintaining a career in the arts. And you're somebody who, I mean, we're similar age. Probably you're way younger than me, but I think
we're similar age, but we won't get too deeper into that. But
I don't know. But like,
the struggle is super real, and yet the rewards are super real. And I'm exactly the same. But I always say, like, life begins at the edge of the comfort zone. So putting ourselves into things that are scary all the time, which you've been doing forever and I've been doing for a long time too. It's that moment of like, I don't want to jump in this pool. This thing is too high. I'm scared. And you have to do it anyway because it's happening. And anytime you get to the other side of that, you kind of grow an inch, and you're like, oh gosh, I actually did that. I pulled that off. I managed to do that. Or better still is like, it didn't go great. I got my ass handed to me, but I learned so much from it. The trick, I think, is always to turn the wins or the losses into a gift and just keep trucking.
And how much of that, I totally agree with all that. Like, the losses you take, they're only losses sort of if you give up, I guess. I mean, because otherwise they're just become learning experiences. But how much do you weigh on a sort of spiritual realm going into the sort of topic of like the sort of general theme of this one, which is prayer and meditation and how they sort of help us get through all these problems and all these struggles in our creative lives. How much does that realm help you, and how much do you lean on it?
It's absolutely huge for me. I attribute all whatever successes I've had in my life to it. It gives me a lot of purpose. You do the same thing, where there's a lot of love and a lot of sort of altruism and stuff like that in the messaging of the songs. And so I always talk about the idea of using the microphone for good. And so that can be in the songs, it can be in the socials, it can be whatever, but the idea of you're getting up in front of people, and that's a privilege and a responsibility, And so I really try to use my powers for good. Having you sent me a chapter to go through, which I did. And the idea of pregame before a tour or before a show, my prayer is always to touch people's hearts. And that really does give me purpose. Then I see it as service work. It's so easy to be driven by ego or whatever in our art form. I was just talking to my friend Justine about this today. You have to have a certain degree of ego to put yourself out there all the time for years upon end. But the idea of like really trying to touch people, and I often find myself, if I'm in another country or I'm far away from home and I'm tired and I'm wet and I'm hungry and my luggage got lost or whatever, but you look out and, see a grown man getting misty during the show, and I'm like, this is exactly where I need to be tonight. And that really feels like a gift.
That's so interesting. It's like, that's something I've been doing a lot more lately, which is just doing like emotional freedom tapping technique, these like acupuncture points, and saying mantras before I go on about wanting to give God's love to the crowd or be a light or be of service. Yeah, it really helps because it just you're going in there with a attitude of purpose or a motivation, a purpose-driven motivation rather than a motivation to try to get something from the crowd. Exactly. And when you are on stage with that as your motivation, you can endure so much. You can endure like a lackluster room. You can endure a light turnout. You can endure people chatting. And it's wild. It gives you almost like a superpower to make every event, no matter how sort of lame it seems in the beginning, it might seem in the beginning, into a transformative experience for yourself and everybody else. And then that becomes kind of like a weird game. So even if something's really bad, it can become like you can almost sort of like smile at it and go, okay, how do I convert this into something that's just mind-blowing?
Absolutely. Last year, before I went on my fall tour to Europe, I caught this interview with Springsteen, and he was talking about you take an artist, you take an audience, you take an empty space, and within seconds, they can get on the same vibration. And so I always think that's really neat. Sometimes if you do a 2-set show, it's not till the second set where everything locks in and everybody, but generally in a perfect world, you get them fairly quickly on your vibration, but it is vibrational. And so if your heart is really coming through, and a big part of what we do, the music is one part, the storytelling and the talking between is also a really important part of the show, particularly in a strip show, to really sort of have the audience vested and sort of touch them and have things that resonate with them, to set up the songs or to explain who you are or why you're there or what happened on the way there, the whatever sacrifices went into the night happening. And I really, obviously we've sort of seen that play out for a long time, but actually to hear Bruce talking about that, I thought, wow, that is really true. And it is profound. You take an empty space, you walk in there in the afternoon, there's nothing happening. And the audience comes in and you come out, and pretty quickly you can sort of gauge where they are. And if they're a little scattered, you have to bring them in. And then once you do, then suddenly we're kind of all on the same wave together. And so the emotional highs, if there's a funny moment or a teary moment or a big soaring moment, like everybody's surfing that same wave. And I think that is, for lack of a better word, that's part of the drug that fuels us, because like, oh, wow, we had this really moment of togetherness where these words and music that I toiled over were connecting. And that's a beautiful feeling. And I think that's even in your painting and things like that, to create and have it really connect. That's something that we're always chasing as artists. And when that really happens, it's so gratifying. You're like, oh wow, all of my work and effort have paid off. Like, this is beautiful. It's never about I was just seeing a thing about Richard Ashcroft talking about Bittersweet Symphony and winning the case or whatever. But he's like, it was never about the money. It was just about the song. And I think that too, if you really lean into the purpose and the music, and the other things come. But keep it like the Quincy Jones quote, like, if you're trying to write a hit, God walks out of the room. You know, that whole concept where you're trying to really honor the muse and do your best work, then divine things can happen.
That's interesting. Yeah, I heard Richard Ashcroft talk about the fact that they did an acoustic version of Bittersweet Symphony that didn't have that sample, but ironically it sounded very Stonesy, like the acoustic
that was the thing. Yeah, I saw this video and it was Alan Klein, right, the
That's
famous manager.
Funny.
He's like, yeah, forget about the loop. The vocal line is still similar to This Could Be the Last Time, to mixed melody, and that's why he went after them for so long. But yeah, I guess the idea is now Richard Ashcroft gets all future royalties, but there's 50 million of earnings in the past that he did not get.
Well, it's funny because the guy who engineered my first record engineered also, I think, part of my second record, he engineered In the Sun, is Ben Finley. He's the one that got them that sample at Real World. Yeah, he's the because they were recording at Real World. I think they recorded that there. I got to meet him there a long time ago. But so have you ever had a period where you're like, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and you're like me, you're a journeyman. You know, it's not, you've had a lot of success, but it hasn't been all, you know, rainbows and unicorns on your way to like the, you know, the Grammys and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, we get out there and grind for it. So have you ever had periods where you've like considered quitting or like been super down and then leaned on sort of prayer and meditation to bring yourself back, or how did you get back from periods like that, assuming you've had those?
Absolutely, I've had those. And yeah, I think to have I think no matter what level of the food chain as an artist you may be, if you're Lady Gaga or whatever, you're like, oh my God, we did so great last time. What if I don't next time? You know, it never goes away. You're trying to top yourself. And sometimes I always say, you know, in what we do, the money and the amount of effort rarely line up. But I had a period, my third record, I had some success overseas with my second record, and I made this big shiny record. I had Toby Wright mix it, who had mixed Jar of Flies for Alice in Chains, and I spent like $25,000 of, you know, family money on making this big opus, and I really believed in it. And my European label actually dropped me because they're like, the record was too mainstream, and so I was like, oh my God,
backfired.
It literally backfired for a period. And so I had this period of that year where I was waking up before the sun with a stomach ache. Like, I have put us in harm's way. It's not working, blah, 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 blah.
By the way, pause for a second. I love stories like this. I just love them, dude. Not because I want you to suffer, but we're talking about the past, and I love stories like this. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, well... You know, exponentially to be an artist and a family guy is even more kooky.
That's why I like it, because now I have a 4-year-old, so I can completely relate to it.
And so there's this mashup of reality and the muse.
Yep.
And again, the idea of commerce and art are such strange bedfellows. But I had made this record that I really believed in, and the thing was, I had mixed it with my previous mixer, and I was in Europe on tour, and I played it for a friend at her house, and she had a big bitchin' sound system, and I thought, oh God, my record sounds like shit. I came back to LA, I'm like, we have to remix it, it's not good enough. And so I got Toby to mix it. Between us kids, it was $10,000 for a mix, which was not minor, so my $15,000 went to $25,000.
Not per song, for the whole record? Or
for the whole record, yeah. Okay, but as an independent artist in 2008
no, that's
money,
a lot.
It was $25,000. But again, I was just chasing the muse. I was like, I always say my process is like Frogger. No, yes, no, there it is. There, you know, and eventually there's exactly what I was shooting for. So Anyway, I had lost my record deal over there. I had a song called Amsterdam that I loved madly that I had written as a love song to Holland, which is over the years has done fine for me. But the point is, there was a period there where it was really bleak. I was really hard on myself. I was really frightened that I had put us in harm's way and dug a grave I couldn't get out of. And even at that same time, I had a falling out with my father over that record. I'd sent him this opus that I had made, and he flippantly said, maybe that's what they're listening to in California, but I don't get it, which was really heartbreaking. I put a lot of effort into it. And I remember I said, you need to work on your fucking...
But I mean, like I've played stuff from my dad and gotten similar.
Of course.
But he'll flip, though. Like, it's weird because he'll do that. He'll do, like, the whole, like, you know, that kind of what you just described. He'll do that sometimes. But then other times I'll give him stuff and he'll do the exact opposite. So it's and I never know which. It's weird. Anyway,
yes,
so go ahead.
But my point, though, as a dad myself, like if my kid made the shittiest record ever, I would be like, I like the drums or whatever. I would find something kind to say. But at that moment, we kind of had a breakup, me and my father, for a while because we were already on thin ice. And I'm like, you need to work on your fucking tact. I'm like, I worked really hard on that. And if you don't have anything better to say than that, I'm kind of speechless. So,
by the way, there's also just another aside. There's this great video on I forget, but it's Lars Ulrich's dad listening to Saint Anger, and then tells them like I would delete that whole record. Like,
I love that guy. That dude is legend. Proper Danish dad.
And it turns out he was kind of right. Like, you know, that's not one of their high water marks.
Yep.
Anyway. So.
Well, anyway, so to your point, like at that point I was 10 years into my Buddhist practice. And so I just, like in our practice, we chant a mantra, you know, and the idea is like that you pray for yourselves and others. It's super altruistic. It's very humanistic. And basically I just had to, so many times I talk about in what we do, particularly traveling alone and all these things where you put yourself in the weeds a lot. You have to be your own best friend. And again, as it was happening, as that record was coming to life, I heard it. You know, I'm sure you've had the same where you kind of hear the finished record before it exists. And so you're chasing this thing you've heard. And so anyway, in time, that record ended up being my biggest success. It's recouped a bunch. That my song Feels Like the End was licensed like 15 times. And there's a lot of evergreen tunes on that record. But for that time, it was terrifying. I've been really blessed as an independent. All of my records, my new one just came out, but all of my first 7 records all recouped. And as an independent, that's ultra rare. And I've been really blessed. And the same thing, I think that's sort of fortune in sort of my purpose and in my practice and in just sort of the kind of human I try to be. The universe sees me and gives me enough to keep going. And so the idea of coming through these moments where things are super dire. Also, as a married guy, as a couple, we came through that. And my wife's always been so supportive. But over the years, there's definitely been times where, man, this is not looking great. Do I go drive for UPS? Do I do something else to supplement? And I always like, God damn it, I'm an artist. I don't have that many hours in the day to spare on anything but this. Like, I will pull it out. But there were times where it was pretty flippin' scary and pretty dark. And you had to dig really deep. And there's definitely been those moments of kind of despair. And at the same time, I have so many artist friends that have had their moment of despair that I've been the pal to help lift them through it. And I think that's a big part of it too, is the idea of community. And I have so many brothers and sisters that are world-class artists, and some are working a ton, some are more introspective and home and in their head, and they don't really put their nose to the wheel. And that's fine too, but it's hard to monetize unless your nose is to the wheel. So it's really about finding the balance of what gives you joy and fulfillment and keeps the lights on.
That's interesting. So you leaned into your Buddhist practice at that point, like, so you fall out with your dad, the label sort of drops you in Europe, and like you're probably, most of your bread and butter's coming from Europe at that point too, right? Like
a good chunk of it was. And I had gone over 2005. This year it makes 20 years I've been going overseas. Right. And my record Stargazer came out in 2006, and I believe the bestseller I was on a label called Lucky Dice, which was more I never consider myself Americana ever. I'm just like, I always say solo artist because I don't want it to be too genre specific. But my previous record had done really well. I got great press all over Europe and then the biggest magazines in Holland, and kind of made some noise. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've been cut off between myself and the middleman to book me and keep my name in the paper in Europe. And so I was able to pivot, and by the record after, I was back on a label and had new booking team. Basically, it didn't really slow me down at all. I just found another way, and that's another thing too. So many people are, how do you go to Europe? How do you? I'm like, you just do. You find a way. You make it happen. And particularly to be independent, like if there's nothing happening and you don't make something happen, there's nothing happening. And so many times I always talk about team building and stuff. So I've had some bigger labels over there. I've had smaller labels. I've had big agents. I've had small agents. And sometimes to have a really tight little team that's really heart and soul beats having the big shiny team, considerably.
So, but the thing is, it's, you have, I mean, I know a little bit about your backstory. We've gone on some long drives. You have a survival instinct, and that you have to understand, and you probably do understand, but it is a big gift that a lot of people don't have. Like that, the fact that you're able to take it on the chin in a few different ways and go like, okay, next, how am I going to get over this? What am I going to do the next thing? And then you also have the spiritual component, the fact that you do have this spiritual practice where you're not just dependent on your own ego strength, you're also leaning on spirit. I mean, that's a pretty epic sized toolkit in this, Practical Guide to Supernatural Genius Toolkit array. So, I
agree.
That's a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't necessarily have. So how in those moments, break down like the sort of, you're doing the chants and the mantras. What are you when you're, and there's always that story of Tina Turner as well, who when she went through her reinvention,
she practices the same Buddhism that I do,
and she did chanting and stuff like that, and then she ends up like winning a Grammy and stuff like that. And who knows if they're linked? I mean, they probably are.
Of course they are. Herbie Hancock too.
Yeah. And so what does the practice look like? Do you wake up first thing in the morning and get to chanting? Is it for a half hour? Is it for 5 minutes? Like, how does it walk us through it?
Yeah, well, basically over my shoulder there, that's my little altar. And that's called a Butsudan, that black box. And inside is a scroll called a Gohonzon. And basically, there's many sects of Buddhism I practice, which is called Nichiren Buddhism. And the mantra is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which means devotion to the mystic law of cause and effect. And so you recite some silent prayers and some sutra stuff, and it is a discipline. So you do it morning and evening, and if you miss one or whatever, do it in the car. It's not like some painful austerity that like someone's cracking the whip. And another thing about it that I love is there's no hierarchy, there's no priesthood or anything like that between you and it. The idea is basically that every person is a Buddha, and a Buddha is an ordinary person that's awake. And so the concept is as we all work on ourselves, there's sort of like a rippling effect in society. And so whatever your gift is, whatever your calling is, like if you use that to sort of lift people up, you get into rhythm. And I really find that to be true. So to your point, sometimes I'll chant for a few minutes, sometimes I'll chant longer, sometimes we'll do it in a group, sometimes it's alone. But the idea is, as you're doing it, you're supposed to sort of see the scroll as like a mirror, and the more you do it, you're like polishing the mirror, and so you see yourself clearly. And so many times where my job sucks, or my boss sucks, or my spouse sucks, or whatever struggles people have, they don't look at themselves, how can I make it better? They're looking at outside. And the idea is to cultivate a sense of self that's impervious to the external. And so really, that's why I like to practice so much. It's so logical and common sense, but it's tied to like having a winning life, whatever that looks like. So you're happy in your job, happy in your relationships, a healthy body and mind. And we all go through these struggles. But each time we overcome one, again, there's this concept of turning poison into medicine that's really huge in the practice. The idea of whatever traumas or whatever we've come through, when we can get to the place to be grateful for them and how we've transcended and how we're better for it, we sort of take its power away. And again, we grow and kind of pay it forward. And so having done that so many times over the years, they talk about actual proof, where the more you practice, the more you get into rhythm and you see protection from the universe. And I missed that train, but I caught this one, and there was my friend from school I haven't seen in 30 years or whatever. Really find yourself in rhythm, which sometimes can be really mystical. And again, the definition of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is devotion to the mystic law of cause and effect. Mystic meaning it's sort of inexplicable, but it's sort of a law of the universe like gravity. To really get into it is to really get in rhythm and cultivate a really high life condition. And again, the idea of a Buddhahood, they say there's 10 worlds, from hell, hunger, animality, learning, realization, up to bodhisattva and Buddhahood. But in each moment, you have hell and Buddhahood. And so it's about basically how we react from moment to moment. And the more we sort of work on ourselves, the more our spirit is sort of at a higher cruising speed. So we're in a better life condition to receive the day and the opportunities and the things that present themselves. And I find it to be 100 billion% effective and great. And again, we don't think of it as a religion. They talk about it. Buddhism is a philosophy we practice religiously.
So there's no God in it, really. No.
And again, it's not necessarily apart from God. I thank God for my Buddhist practice. Years ago, I met this guy, Danny Nagashima, who's amazing. He was about 80 then. I might have told you this, but he was just a glowy, shiny guy. And it was a meeting in someone's home. And at the time, I had a friend who was really struggling, and I was talking to him about Buddhism, and he was afraid that it was a sin or going against God or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I mentioned it to Danny, who's this unbelievable sage who just radiates peace and quick to laughter. He's just amazing. He's like, have your friend chant to be a better Christian. And I thought, if every Christian chanted to be a better Christian, it would be a different world, because the idea is that it's humanistic, that every life is sacred and worthy. And so I think so many times in society, we're seeing that there's the haves and the have-nots, and some are lesser, or if you're browner or gayer or this or that, God loves you less. There's a lot of that thrown around in the world. And then in this Buddhism, it's not that way. Everybody's a Buddha. Even the darkest creature on earth possesses Buddhahood, so treat them with respect. And so it's obviously easier said than done, but that's why it's a lifelong practice of not indulging in regret, not carrying grudges. That's a big thing. I have no grudges against anyone alive or dead, and I don't want to carry that in my body. And for so many people that do, that's a huge takeaway of something to aspire to. Like, don't carry negativity towards anybody. It doesn't hurt them, and it hurts you.
Well, that's huge in Christianity. I mean, forgiveness. So it's the
of course.
It's the same thing. It's like, I mean, that's a huge part of my practice too, which is Ho'oponopono. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you.
I'm super hip to that one too.
It's a form of chanting. Basically, it's a form of cleaning. I mean, even the guy, Dr. Hugh Lin, who healed a whole mental asylum for the criminally insane using Ho'oponopono without ever seeing a patient. He talks about it as cleaning. Like cleaning, and that's similar to Buddhism, what you're just saying there. I mean, and then there's that whole, like, Jesus's lost years, or the years that they don't talk about, where he was in India, and a lot of people think he was like a yogi and all that kind of stuff, which doesn't really seem like a stretch to me. I identify as a Christian, yet I go practice yoga every chance I get and chant Ho'oponopono, and I don't really think it's a sin. And I totally agree. Like, that Buddhism, what you just described, to me seems like a tool. There doesn't really seem to be a devotion to a God, except for maybe your internal highest self, your internal Buddha. But that's similar to the concept of being born again in Christianity, where Jesus is Christ consciousness is born again in you when you really forgive, when you really let go of all the resentments, when you really clear away all the debris and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like very similar stuff. I mean, the only thing I would say is the reason I sort of gravitate towards Christianity is because I do like the idea of a personal God that's concerned with me on a personal level that I can connect with, like, hey God, what's up? And maybe that's, you know, like sort of even, you know, I don't know, maybe that's not great that you need that or whatever. I personally resonate with that and like that aspect.
Absolutely.
But all this other stuff sounds right on point to me too, and part of what
I think
do
whatever
every
your
day
spiritual
anyway.
practice is, it doesn't matter. It's just, is it making you a better person? Is it making you a happier person?
Right.
If it's making you more hateful or more fearful, or you're missing out on this earthly experience because you're so concerned with heaven and hell and this and that, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, you want to see heaven, like stand on a beach in Maui or something, go out into the forest. Like there's heaven and hell in every single day. And it's up to us
Well,
to
heaven
really
is the absence of fear, I think. I mean, I think hell is when you're living a life revolving around fear. And all the spiritual practices, all the prayers, all that stuff. And a creative, like to loop it back to like just the sort of being creatively free, a creative operating on all cylinders is a fearless creative, basically, is one living in total trust of their instincts, in total connection, and just without sort of fear holding them back. What do you think to that?
I agree. Fear is really, 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 really the enemy of creativity, of joy, of relationships, of all the things. Fear can really, really block out the sun. And the idea is, if you can find this place, I remember really specifically in the pandemic, in the summer of 2020, I was on this like Zoom meeting, and it was just simply about gratitude. And I, like, in that moment, because I was in a bad way, I was coming out of a really bad way, but that was just kind of a dark period for all of us as creatives and stuff. But in that moment, I just vowed to like lean into gratitude, and I've held on to it every single second since. And so just starting your day and ending your day with gratitude, just that little practice is huge. And a lot of people miss out. And so many of us, we're living in the modern world, and you can lament for the simpler times and all this, and that may be true, but those times are gone. This is still the day of your life. Like it's a blank canvas. Go for a hike, go to the beach, play with your dog, bounce your kid on your knee, listen to a record, find the joy. And I find that I do constantly. And also, I was saying last year, I saw that thing with Springsteen. The same tour, I saw this quote from Pramananda Yoganantha. I forget his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. But it was just, what you focus on is your reality. And I caught that, I believe, at the end of the tour. And again, on that tour, I stayed in Amsterdam for like 10 nights. I walked almost 60 miles while I was in Amsterdam on that tour. Basically, I would take trains or cars would pick me up to my show, but I wanted to have a home base. And I was just walking around taking a trillion pictures because everything was so beautiful. I just wanted to take it with me. But the idea was, my reality was so beautiful because all I saw was beauty all the time. I find when I'm on the road, through the lens of being away from the comforts of home, being away from the family, all this, like everything takes on an extra layer of poetry, just the beauty of daily life, of interactions of a train station or of a sunrise, everything becomes extra. And so my antenna is really up for the sort of human experience and the wonder of it all. And that's really my favorite part of the road, is the complete freedom. I'm a creative out there for one purpose, but like, because I've only got 90 minutes on stage, the rest of the day is sort of mine to do whatever. I'm on the hunt for beauty and inspiration and connection, and I find it. Like, if you're looking for the beautiful things, they're there to be found. If you're looking for things to be really hopeless about, you'll find those too. So as simple as it is, it's just like shifting the focus to things that lift you up. And if you find them, pass them on, and lifting up others. Again, I have so many friends in various, of course, of every walk of life. Many are artists. Many of them have health issues or this or that. And so I'm constantly trying to like lift up friends and stuff like that, which is a great practice too. In terms of Christianity versus this, often I just think it just comes down to the golden rule. Just be cool, be grateful, lift up others, and repeat, and the road will rise up to meet you. I think so many people we're taking in so much negativity on our timelines all day long. It's designed to make us hopeless and fearful, and the sky is falling and looking for someone to blame and all that. And I really protect myself from that stuff. I see it, but I don't harp on it. I don't watch the news on television. I haven't for years. I protect myself against it, and then my reality is beautiful. I know there's weird shit going on. There's tons of weird vibes going on, but I don't want... These are years of precious years of my life that I'm going to protect, and I'm going to find the joy and the beauty of every day, and I do. And so it doesn't mean that it's the same every day. Well, of course, we have scary periods and fearful periods, and oh my God, I made a mistake, I blew that, or those moments will come. But having faith that you'll get to the other side of that is essential, and I feel pretty armed with that.
How do you get over regret?
I always say, and some people,
and also, does regret hinder you a lot? Is it something is it a big burden? Do you have does it mess with you, or is it something you don't deal with much, or how do you get over it?
That's another sort of specific practice that I honestly really do try to put into my life. I honestly try to never indulge in regret, ever, because again, the idea is, how am I better? How am I grateful? How am I a better partner? How am I a better dad? How am I a better friend? How am I a better artist? Like, just the idea, again, of turning poison into medicine, whatever the mishap was, whatever the screw up was, forgive yourself. Same thing. It's just like the idea of holding grudges against others. Holding grudges against ourselves is the worst thing we can do. And so being aware of that, I could have done that better, or you talked about the shoulda, coulda, woulda in the book. I try not to really indulge that, because that leads nowhere. There's nothing good can be found out of shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like, literally, there's no. It's not a practice that has a positive outcome. So
that's true. You know that. Like, of course we know that, but like. Okay, so how much do you think in this? Like, our battle is not with flesh and blood, but with principalities in other worlds. That's a Christian thing. It's in the Bible. It's like, and the idea is that basically the thoughts in our head, the things that will like gang up on us and make us regret or make us into fear and all that kind of stuff, is demonic in nature, is spiritual in nature. It's not from a broken psychology. It's not because you had a bad childhood. It might be, the bad childhood didn't help, but really it's spiritual realm principalities messing with you. How much do you think that's true? And like, okay, intellectually, like, regret's pointless, but like, it's one of those things that maybe it's easier said than done to get rid of it.
Well, I think, first of all, obviously we all know it's there. You see it's there. You see that there's the potential for regret. Basically, I think the idea is identifying it. Just like, that sucks. It wasn't my first choice. That was not my favorite period.
I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah. But how do we ensure that we don't go down that rabbit hole again? And if there is somebody that you've done wrong, or this, communicate. Communication is another thing that 90% of the humans, 99% of the humans get wrong. Make peace. Forgive everybody. Like, it's so simple. And again, in my own family, there were such chasms. Like, my mother and my dad split when they were young. My mother and her parents basically split the same time. They never spoke again from the 70s till they're all dead now. Like, nobody ever.
You have such a crazy wildlife story, man.
But again, like, I at some point, north of 40 years old, I really had this sort of epiphany that, like, all of these things that seemingly on paper were negative are now my superpower. Yeah. Truly. And in my marriage, and my relationship with my kid, and my relationship with my art, all the things, like, so many you hear like Tom Petty and Bono talking about all these childhood things. And I just watched the Springsteen movie the other day too.
How was that?
And it was amazing. It was very dark, but it was very relatable. And getting back to my record, The Sky Below, the idea of trusting the muse, he had already had really big successes with The River and Born to Run. And yet he was birthing Nebraska, which everyone around him was like, what the hell are you doing, dude? We're like crushing it. Like, what are you doing with this folk record? What the fuck are we supposed to do with this? But he was like, no, this has to happen. And like, further, I'm not putting my picture on it. And further, I'm not touring, and I don't want to do any press. And it was just so balls, but it was just him trusting the muse. He had Born in the USA in the can. And they were all like, they'd heard the song. Everybody was dying for that record. He's like, no, I'm not doing anything but Nebraska. And then, not to ruin the movie, but that record went on to number 3 with no press, no tour. And it was the idea that he trusted the muse. So, yeah, just my thing is, at this point in my life, like I've found this really great place of happiness and gratitude and rhythm and productivity, and I really want to protect it. I want to keep it going. And again, the idea of balance, trying to figure out what balance looks like. As you know, I produce records and stuff, and that can be very gratifying, but also take a ton of my time and energy and brain space. So keep always trying to find the balance there. I love the idea of it not being all about me for months, which I think is really healthy, to like help somebody else with their dream and things like that. That can also be quite gratifying. But when the pendulum swings back, like my tour that I just did, I was so in the moment and in the zone on stage, it just reminded me that this is first and foremost who and what I do best. So again, as creatives trying to figure out how to sustain ourselves, it's really kooky, but just for me, it's about honoring the muse, not really thinking too much about what the music is or what, just that it's here, and trying to like be a doula to get it out in the world to the best of my ability, but not really questioning the process, or just being grateful that I'm inspired.
So, but when you're dealing with like getting over regret, how do you specifically do it? How do you like get over regret to like keep yourself on track?
One practice for sure is the idea, if there's someone that's wronged you or that you've wronged or whatever, is just simply like praying for that person's happiness, things like that. Anything that was seemingly negative, or someone that's wronged you super bad, by truly wishing them well, no matter how horrible they are, like that in itself is a healing practice that really has legs, I believe. And so just there's so many ways to physically embody these negative emotions of regret or sorrow or this or that can really bog us down. And my father, same thing. He's had a lot of health things his whole life. He had 4 marriages, and all of them took a bite out of him. And so he never really kind of soared. And so I always think that's such a cautionary tale. Who you pick in life as your partner can be emotionally really, really hard. And so I just think that's another reason I try to really show up and be a good husband, you know.
Oh man, I'm sorry to laugh at that.
I know. I'm sorry to bring it up.
No, I'm laughing at the thing you said about like, you're like, I'm laughing out of recognition, because it is like, it's just the toxic relationship thing, of course. Like that's like, like that can really sort of like wreak havoc on your life for sure.
Absolutely. And in the Buddhist practice, though, they talk about that, like that's a karmic thing, where like if historically relationships aren't working for this, that, or the other, you again chant or pray or focus and determine, like, same thing, how can I make it better rather than anything external? What can I do better? What can I learn about myself? Make peace with what you did wrong and take it forward. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that we have these karmic cycles, often family for years and decades or lifetimes or whatever, that we are like doomed to repeat until we like stare them down. And I really find that to be true too. And as long as we're here, every day is full of hope and possibility. It's so easy. I was just talking to my friend Justine this morning, that just that simple concept of like, so much of our stress is about yesterday and tomorrow, even in our relationships. Like so much, what if or that thing happened, or what if this happened? But actually, this moment right now is actually pretty cool. So if you just hang out there a little more, suddenly that other stuff isn't so weighty. And,
so is your dad still like around? Are you guys still talking? You brought him up a few times. Like, is he?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Does he have any relationships left, or is he just like? Does he tell you like, "Oh, son, I should have done it differently," or what?
Yeah, his thing's thorny, but he's basically in a veterans hospital in Pennsylvania. He's been there since pre-pandemic. It's almost like he's incarcerated, and we don't go down the rabbit hole of regrets with him. And I never like beat him up about what he wasn't ever. We do speak. I call him every week, and yeah, our whole thing is very strange, but it's totally fine. It's just, I think, again, the idea was like I wasn't scheduled to come along. My parents basically hooked up, and I was conceived within whatever hours, and so I think for both of them, it like jostled them at such a young age that it was a problem, and maybe stunted their sort of evolution as humans, and like, but at the same time, I think part of that has always driven me, because you're looking for validation, you're looking to prove, look how worthy I am, look how awesome I am. And I find a lot of artists have that. In the Tom Petty movie, he was talking about if you have father issues, it can go a long way. If you have father and mother issues, you can go all the way. Yeah. And so again, I think the whole idea is just take what you've got and make the most of it, and don't indulge in regret. Don't hang out in that space.
Well, I think like all of us, like I've kind of gone all the way to like, I think we all have father and mother issues. I think that's just the human condition. Even when I look at my child, like it's also just the human nature to like want to be special. And I see her do some things like where she's performing or doing this, that, and the other. And even like we'll say stuff like, will this make people like me? And I'll, or if like she'll dress up real pretty or something and say, will people like me on the playground? Something like that, a little comment. And I'll have to say like, look, people are going to love you, but it's like but it doesn't matter if people love you. And what's important is I say something smart in that moment. I can't do it. Like something along those lines. Like you don't need other people's approval and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, it's a balancing act, because you understand that human nature thing. And then, and in the final assessment, all of our parents really do the best they can.
Absolutely.
Even though the tools that they had were probably like substandard. Just like I'm doing the best I can as a parent, just like you did the best you can as a parent. And, you win some and you lose some in that realm.
Yes.
So it's interesting. And that helps you, forgive and just truly love your family of origin wherever they're at, meet them where they're at. And then that ultimately,
absolutely,
that's where I get to. And then, for regret, it's like the Serenity Prayer, like you learn in the 12-step movement, which is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because I think like when you really want to begin something, or you really want to go from where you are now, with like letting go of all the baggage of the past, I don't really know of a better, like that would be a form of, whether you believe in God or not, whether you attach God to, because it usually is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Whether you put God in the equation or not in that one, that's almost Buddhist-like, in that it's just an excellent tool. It's just a great mantra. Grant me the serenity, give me the peace to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's like,
it's so true. It's so profound. Ever.
Yeah.
And again, it's very commonsensical, but a lot of people aren't able to do that. But it's why we're here, is to figure that stuff out. And again, as a parent of a beautiful young kid that I've spent time with, your little ray of light.
Yeah, that's true. She loves you.
Well, she's got good taste. But the idea, like our parents' generation, like the idea of communication and stuff was not the same as it is now. So
Right.
nobody talked about their feelings back
Exactly.
in the 80s or 70s
Yeah.
or whatever.
Boomers.
And so we have this gift of a little bit more information, and that's always
Much
been
more.
my thing with my kid. Is we've just been so open forever. I never really sugarcoated anything and gave her, I told you, I gave her every sex and drugs cautionary tale known to man. And now she's a beautiful 19-year-old out in college. Lord help me, you know.
Right.
So now you hope the training holds, but it's, it's just, the thing is, it's all going by so fast. This life goes by so fast, and things
It
that aren't
really
serving
does,
us, they can sully the human experience. And so when we find ourselves going into these patterns, you have to put the work in. And another sort of thing, like your mantra you were talking about, another is just the idea of like making a vow to yourself to like get to the other side of it. Like, what do you want? What's your ideal version of you or of your life? You know, and then figure out what that is, and then make a vow to get there. And every day, move an inch towards that. Mm-hmm. And we all have, again, both of us were talking about all the things that we have managed to get done, but also all of the things where we get stuck and how we feel like we're failures and we're not doing enough. And I'm always somewhere between unbelievably hardworking, motivated, and then I feel like the ultimate lazy bones. And so it's just about each day trying to move forward and do something that makes you feel good about yourself, or something you're proud of, or gets, again, crossing something off of the to-do list. And just by virtue of doing that every day, you're moving in a positive direction. And so things that are making us stuck, those are the things that we really have to like look at and think, how can we be the change? Because if we're waiting on something external, that may never happen. So how do we change how we approach it or how we look at it? Things like that. And that's really, I think, where a lot of the breakthroughs can come.
Well, that's where I lean on God and prayer, because I'll start my day with usually I'll get up early and really start writing first thing, but then I'll do, like, after an hour or so of writing, or a couple hours of writing, then I'll go do breath work, and I'll do meditation and kind of a form of prayer. And it's like at that moment I'm turning it over to something outside of my ego. So there's a moment of relief and release right there where I'm just turning it over. And then I'll go and approach the day and try to do some work or figure stuff out. Go do a yoga practice, eat lunch, try to do more work. And then get to a place around sort of 5 or 6 o'clock where I'm a little scattered again, and I forget that I'm supposed to turn all this over. And then that's when I'll go and turn it over again and do another breath work session again. And so it's like these, almost like in a day, there's like these two safe havens where I'm turning it back over. Okay, like I need to like pass the ball to you now, and whatever I could do, and then I'll pick it up again. Usually after that, I don't have that much more work left in me. Maybe I'll go home and mix a song or work on something a little bit. But that's like the way I've been operating lately, which has been a lot. Like I quit.
It's quite the schedule you have.
Lately. Yeah, well, I'm super motivated because also the other half of the week I'm looking after my daughter, so it becomes a whole different thing. So when I have time to myself, I've like learned how to maximize that time, and I never used to. I didn't used to on a regular basis or to this degree. Like, I used to have my dopamine attached to making records. I remember back in the mid-90s and the early 2000s, I didn't want to do anything but be in a studio recording. And so that looked like workaholism or something like that. But my dopamine was all just completely lined up with what I did for work. Yeah. And since then, in the days we live now with our distraction devices and all this other stuff, it's much more difficult to focus. Yeah. And the good thing about having a very young child that you look after a lot of the time is you then take the time that you don't have that, and you realize, okay, I want to achieve this, and this. I've just finished a script for my Ballad of Boogie Christ musical. I'm working on this self-help book. I want to launch a podcast. I'm mastering a new solo record at the moment. And that's a lot of stuff. And then you got to keep up with like socials and all this other stuff, and then figure out tours and booking and promoting those things. I mean, it becomes like an unbelievable amount of work. And yet, like you find out, well, it's like, okay, if I take away all the distractions and I line up my dopamine triggers to just like not self-destructing, not self-sabotage, no addictions, no sort of negative distractions, that's hard enough to overcome.
Yeah, it is.
But all that work and all those goals can actually help you overcome that stuff, and it can all line up, especially if you then also implement your spiritual practice to facilitate it and to give you those relief valves like a couple times a day.
Yeah, I was thinking as you're listing all the things, how exhausting it all sounds. But the point is, we've been doing that for so long. We've been balancing all that shit for so long. It's so preposterous when you look at it. It's insanity.
But dude, imagine having no sense of purpose and no direction and being bored. I mean, the other side of that coin is you're just like kind of like whatever. I mean, ideally, you would have like a team doing a lot of that, most of that stuff for you, and it would be much like sort of easier, and you would have a higher level of so-called success at maybe one or two of those things, and it would all be free and easy. But that could be an illusion. So I don't know. I'm in a building stage, and whatever the age I happen to be physically is sort of irrelevant. I mean, I am where I'm at, doing what I'm doing, and I'm pretty gassed up about it. I mean, I don't woe is me about it. I'm kind of having fun. I feel like sort of charged up about it and inspired. So the alternative is I could just be sort of bored and aimless, and I've been that before. I've been addicted, bored, and aimless. I know what that feels like, and that is way worse.
Yeah, there's nothing more wonderful than having a purpose to get you out of bed. And again, me too. I've had those periods where you didn't want to get out of bed, and that's not so fun.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just I think the main thing is just is listening to your heart and what really inspires you, what gives you joy in life, and then running at that with all you got.
Yeah. And knowing you're not alone, and then that's the point of like implementing things like prayer and meditation, because really, I mean, it is a spiritual battle. Like a life on planet Earth, a fulfilling, creative life full of love and light and a sense of purpose where you're actually offering something to humanity. To get to that place means you're waging spiritual warfare out here, because there is a dark aspect of the planet we're on. There's a dark aspect to all these distractions that we have around us all the time. There's a dark aspect to addictions and all the things that can pull us down. And when we look across humanity, the amount of people that are really living in their sense of purpose isn't like a huge percentile. It's a lot of people that want to be, but are stuck, and in ways we, on an obstacle course. They're stuck on an obstacle course that you and I have been on for 30 odd years, right? Like, so it's kind of like, oh, I know that part of it. Like, oh yeah, no, I've been trapped in that part of the obstacle course like at least 400 times. Sure. Here's what you do to get out of that. Oh yeah, I've been trapped on that obstacle part of the obstacle course. Like, oh yeah, that one took me out for 2 years one time. Let me tell you how to get out of that one. You know what I mean? It's like that.
Yeah, I always think to be in the middle of our lives as a creative, full-time creative, is such a blessing. It's so rare to get to this part of your life and still be doing your childhood dream or whatever. That's very, very unusual. Yeah. And so again, a lot of my friends were and are amazing artists, but reality came creeping in, and they started selling insurance or whatever decades ago, but they could have gone all the way same as anybody else. But those of us that have had the whatever fortune to keep it going, I always feel like I'm carrying the torch for them too. And that's why for whatever, I always crack the whip on myself so much. I just want to do a really great job. And to people that pay money to come to a concert in the wintertime or whatever, like I want them to be so stoked that they came out. That is a problem in our line of work. The idea of being ill or something, or like the idea of letting people down is like the most terrifying concept in the world. I'm trying to like let that go. But historically, you know, if you're not in good voice, or you're not in good whatever, like can be the worst depressing thing in the world. So same thing with me going to the gym and going to the sauna and supplements and sunlight and grounding, do everything to keep the temple strong, because if I can't perform, then I can really fall into despair super quickly, just because you can't communicate, and we're sort of born to communicate. And that part can be really tricky too. So again, when people are paying real money, or they bought their ticket a month in advance or whatever, the idea of letting anybody down is the worst. And so I just always want to do a really, really good job, and hopefully touch people in a way that they need it. And that's really always sort of the goal. And particularly when I'm away from home and stuff. Yeah, it's a crazy job that we do. Mm-hmm. But I always say the rewards are worth it. I think, again, a lot of people I know became sort of cover artists, and they do tribute bands and stuff like that, and they can make really great money, but that never held any allure to me, because to me the whole reason is to communicate like things that I'm feeling that I've written, right? I mean, that's the real joy, is your own sentiment is connecting out there on some cellular level. That's the most gratifying part of it for me, performing.
And you also wrote a musical, because I was telling you that I wrote a script finally for the Ballad of Boogie Christ, and then you were like, "Oh yeah, I wrote a musical." So I didn't realize you had. Did you put on a musical, like a one-man show, or what? Let
me correct you. I did not write a musical, but I had a musical when I did the big tour with Styx and Yes. When I played Jones Beach, a friend, Bill, bought all my records and gave them to Larry Carpenter, who was a director who lived in New York City, and he had done Broadway musicals. He's also a television director, Emmy-winning guy, and he had always had this dream of making a trunk musical, which is basically writing a musical based on someone's existing catalog of music, right? So he got all of my records, and then he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I'm Larry Carpenter, I'm a director, I'd love to work with you on a musical." I'm like, "Oh my God, that sounds awesome." So he flew out to meet me, and we went out to breakfast in Los Feliz. And I'm like, "Hey, thanks so much. Great to meet you. Tell me some story points that I can get to work." He goes, "No, you don't understand." He's like, "I want to write a musical to your existing catalog."
You're already done.
Of course, the work wasn't done, but there was a jumping off point. So we did this musical called The Freedom Machine, which was like a really sort of futuristic sci-fi teen political thriller kind of musical that was really great. And so there's a theater district in the Valley on Magnolia. We did a really lo-fi run there. And then we had, I forget what it's called, but we had an opportunity to put it up at the La Mirada, which is a really famous big 1,500 seater south of Los Angeles. And so we had some kind of like sort of like a workshop, but basically where they split the funding with us or something like that. So we had their big sound stage for rehearsals, and we did the show on a 1,500 seat theater twice. And it was tons of work, gigantic work. And so David O, who's one of the greatest musical arrangers for musicals in Los Angeles, David O, basically he and I worked together on harmony arrangements. And then, of course, I would do lyrical tweaks. I wrote a few additional pieces for it. But it was really, and Larry financed it and probably spent $100,000 over the couple of years that we worked on it. And the idea for me, the highlight was often Larry would take a story that I wrote, a song that I wrote first person, break it into a duet, and suddenly my exact same words took on a totally different meaning. And being in a room of like actual singers that like were singing 5-part harmony to my shit, I was in tears often. It was so gratifying, so neat, but just it's kind of a long road, and they always say it's 10 years from the page to the stage to get your musical really up and out and doing the thing. But the experience
is that what they say? 10 years?
Yeah, But
Whoa,
prove them
I
wrong,
didn't
Joe.
know
I know
that.
you will.
Like, come on, dude. 10 years. I don't want
Yeah.
to wait that long.
I know.
I'm supposed to do like a read-through performance in Chicago in February. I mean, I just finished the script, like, so. I mean, mine's a one-man. It's written like as a one-man thing. Of course, there's a lot of dialogue between me and my daughter because that's the premise. It starts off with us at a storage space.
Yeah, well, that sounds a lot more logistically doable. Ours, we probably had a 20-person cast plus a pit band. We had projections. You know, it was a pretty big production by the end.
I have projections written in mine too, but like so you guys had it performed in a 1,500 seater twice, and you worked on it for a couple years. And then what happened? How did it decide? Like, what pulled the plug on it?
I just think, frankly, Larry was he was a director for General Hospital, I think. He's directed a few, even in his 70s, he was working 1,000 hours as a director. And it was just like a super labor of love for him. He's an amazing guy. We're really good pals and so inspiring to be around. And for me, it was just a zillion days of work that I didn't, of course, make a nickel on. I was a shit ton of time to invest. But of course, I loved every minute of it. But I just think, logistically, financially, it's just a lot.
It overwhelmed. Basically.
Yeah, but I think, for you to do something a little bit more sort of stripped and intimate is totally doable. And you have such a catalog and such a story. And again, you're the most creative output cat I've ever met. So I'm not scared. You will break the 10-year rule.
Let's hope I break the 10-year rule. All right, man. Well, this has been fantastic. I like this episode 1 of A Practical Guide to Supernatural Genius, the podcast. I loved it.
Well, proud to be on the maiden voyage, brother.
Yeah, and I was like also going like, do I even know how to do this anymore? And you had a migraine earlier, and I was kind of hoping, dude, you would bail, and then I was like, got the text like, no, I'm gonna power through it, and I was like, okay, and I was like, I just had eaten lunch, and I was like actually like just like in a heavy nap, and I was like, I'm sleeping way too much, I need to get up and do stuff, and I had only been sleeping for 10 minutes. It was one of those things, but it felt like. So, but I'm super glad we did it. What do you think? How should we leave it off? Like, do you have any sort of? Let me see if there's any questions I have. Like, any kind of words of wisdom, or let's see. What do you think? Any final thoughts that you have? Or is that?
Well, I just think, in terms of putting a ribbon on everything we've talked about, just as creatives, we have to love ourselves through the rough spots, make determinations to use our powers for good, and touch people's hearts with what we do. And when we're in the weeds, have the balls to reach out and have people, when we need help, get it. If we need support, get it. I think a lot of it too is creatives. We always want to have the illusion of being totally in control and we've got the world on a string and things like that. Sometimes that's not the case, and so in those moments, like it's essential to reach out and get the support that you need to get you back on the road. Figuratively back on the road, on the path.
And if for people that don't have any kind of practice of prayer or Buddhist practice or anything of that nature, what would you recommend to them? Would you suggest a certain thing that they could try? Anything like that? Would you recommend?
Absolutely. Again, the idea of a gratitude practice. Just starting there with really looking, even writing things down to be grateful for, and then like some type of like a mantra or an affirmation of I will, and really lean into that. And the idea is when we're sort of trying to attract fortune and breakthroughs in our lives, the sort of fake it till you make it thing, where you try to inhabit who future you, what they're feeling like. Step into that person. Like the power is already within us, but we have to sort of believe in that, and just kind of do that and repeat, and just the idea that each day is just another opportunity to sort of move the ball forward and forgive ourselves for our lesser moments, and just make a vow to come back tomorrow stronger, better, and keep And the other thing too is in these times as creatives, the idea of keeping it real and keeping humanity in the arts. And that was another thing I thought of on my tour this time, is like with all the advent of artificial intelligence, things like that, the human to human contact thing of a live performance is so beautiful. And that's one thing that they can't really take away. And so those moments as performers are really potent and can really touch people's hearts and make a difference. And so we've got to keep fighting to keep that alive.
Let's keep fighting to keep it alive. And if you're like stuck and you're regretting your past, try out the Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, and just start from where you're at, or maybe go to sleep and then start the next day from a first fresh day. All right, dude. Well, thanks. Tell everyone how to get, like, where they find your music and art and everything.
My songs are wherever you find music. My socials are always Shane Alexander Music. That's also my website and stuff like that too. I'm easy to find.
All right, Shane. Great to talk to you. I appreciate you, brother.
You too, brother. Thanks so much.
That was fun, man.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.